the point here is that those abuse networks are something of the unprotected underbelly of the Kakistocracy. They need it, but it is so difficult to keep it completely hidden.
You're listening to the Corbett Report.
Welcome, friends. James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com. We are recording a conversation on the 9th of April, 2015 today with our old friend Tjeerd Andringa, Professor of Cognitive Sciences at the University of Groningen. I'm sure you will all remember him from my trip to Groningen in the Netherlands last November, and I certainly remember that trip fondly myself, so it's great to have you back on the program today, Tjeerd. Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. It's nice.
How are things in Groningen today?
Actually, pretty good. Weather is nice, shaping up. I've done a lot of teaching in the last couple of months, and it's almost over now, so I feel more and more relaxed.
Excellent. Well, it is springtime. It is a wonderful time, and it's one of those times where I think it's just great to be alive, generally speaking. So let's talk about a horribly depressing subject. Today we're going to talk about open up the can of worms that was opened on CorbettReport.com back in January when I posted the Pedophile in Politics open source investigation, where we're looking at the various instances of political pedophilia and trying to accumulate some facts about what we can document about these various cases, like the VIP pedophile ring in Westminster and the Franklin scandal in the United States and various other scandals, unfortunately too many to enumerate here. And the problem is there is so much information in this investigation. It is almost overwhelming. It's been now three months of myself trying to compile this data into a coherent narrative to try to deliver it as a podcast, and I'm just about ready to do so. But in that process, of course, I did very much reflect on a comment, the single comment, I believe, that you left in this open source investigation, which you left on January 12th, and I will just read that comment right now, because it is going to be something that we're going to talk about as we examine this subject. The question, of course, why? Why is pedophilia such a consistent part of so many different political power circles? And you offered this on January 12th, maintaining a kakistocracy. One of the reasons for the intimate association of the power elite with child abuse is that they might use it to maintain their somewhat hidden kakistocracy. Government by the worst and most evil people. A highly capable brand of psychopath, if you like. Even James didn't know the term kakistocracy. Yes, that's true, so thank you, Tjeerd, for introducing it to me. Psychopathy is only mildly hereditary, so an elite psychopath cannot guarantee that sons or daughters will be just as psychopathic. I expect this entails that they need a steady resupply of ruthless and power-hungry individuals who understand the world deeply and pervasively, and as such are highly capable. Normally, deep and pervasive understanding leads to wisdom and a sense of responsibility, humility even. But that is precisely not what the kakistocracy needs. It needs the same depth and pervasiveness of understanding, but in combination with utter ruthlessness and the capacity to appear respectable. Enter child abuse. By abusing children, you give them an attachment disorder by violating or destroying the deep sense of security that is the basis for an open attitude towards learning and discovering. With this trust violated, the child's world changes from a world of opportunities to a world of potential and actual threats. And often they will search and serve those who can protect them from these threats. They will search and serve those who can protect them from these threats, and in doing so, giving their autonomy away for life. And they might even carry it over to their children, still defying their growth toward autonomy. Aristocrats and priests must have discovered a long time ago that abused children lead to useful adult servants, slaves actually. And while this is despicable to people with a normal moral development, it is a positive thing for psychopaths who see other people as tools anyway. Yet this does not solve the problem of keeping the kakistocracy supplied with respectable-appearing, super high-functioning, and completely ruthless psychopaths. Only a small fraction of the population, say 1%, is psychopathic, and as such has the benefit of an absence of empathy and a conscience. Psychopaths are able to exploit others as if they were tools. Yet the vast majority of them are not particularly evil. They can be ruthless, daring, and callous, but they find mostly norm-abiding ways to be psychopathic. They might be mountaineers, military, ER doctors, car or insurance salesmen, real estate brokers, or white-collar criminals. but most are definitely not the high-functioning individuals that compare with how the power elite see themselves and would accept as their peers. So how do you recruit suitable psychopaths in your midst if they do not advertise themselves as such? Enter child abuse again. If you organize events for the ambitious and capable in which they progressively can show that, notwithstanding their veneer of respectability, they are actually completely ruthless, you have the ideal recruiting grounds for the Kakistocracy. Of course, blackmail plays a role, but the suitable candidates gladly let themselves become blackmailable because this gives them access to the inner sanctum of the Kakistocracy. They prove themselves worthy members and loyal due to their blackmailability, and in return they will receive access to power in a way they could never dream of on their own. After a while they become fully accepted at a level that suits their capabilities, and they will help to maintain the system that gave them so many opportunities, and can end their respectability at any point in time. I think that what I have sketched above is a useful framework to understand the dynamics of elite child abuse networks. It is never an incident. It is just the Kakistocracy maintaining and reinvigorating itself, business as usual. But the few moments the abuse networks become exposed, it provides an ideal opportunity to glimpse the Kakistocracy at work and frantically protecting itself. A very, very interesting analysis. And again, this relates back to the term Kakistocracy, government by the worst and most evil people. And I don't off the top of my head remember the etymology of that word. What is kaki or kakis from?
Worst.
Worst, all right.
Basically,
okay.
yeah. Greek for worst.
Yes, okay, excellent. Well, that makes sense. And this all makes sense. It all follows quite logically, and I think I see how all of these pieces fit together and why child abuse does play that role that you're talking about here. Are there any other aspects to this that you wanted to add to that particular description of the functioning of Kakistocracy?
No, not for the moment. I think it is really something that is a very normal way of this network. And it is, you need something to maintain a network of highly capable but ruthless people stable, and this is typically the way.
It certainly does suggest itself as a convenient tool for this, but some of this seems to me to be predicated on interpretations of child abuse and the effects of child abuse that I know that there is various medical research and psychological research that does back up what you're saying here, but to what extent can we say definitively that child abuse produces useful adult servants, slaves actually, as you say in this passage?
Well, the problem with these kind of things is that if you want to do an experiment, you never get it through the ethical commission. So we have to do with anecdotal evidence and so on. And in addition, I'm a cognitive scientist, and I'm interested in cognitive systems, and those are basically robots or other systems that can do more or less the same things as humans can do. And we are far from that, very far from that. But what interests me is how we can, what we are missing. What is essential, and why can't we make a robot that understands what it is doing? And those kind of things lead me to question topics like autonomy, understanding, self-reliance, all these type of things. And I'm also interested in how our environment shapes our behavior for basically the same reason, because a robot has to live in the environment. People have to live in a certain environment. So if you make an environment in which the robot or the agent or the person has problems, then basically you can guide that agent, because the only thing that you have to do is to produce enough problems. And the only thing that the agent will then do is solve those problems. So if you prevent them from learning solutions, then you can keep people in a certain environment for life. And if the only way to maintain themselves is via some form of servitude, they will do it. They have no choice. So the most important thing that you should prevent if you're a slave owner is that your slaves start to educate themselves outside of the need for guidance. And we actually have a very normal emotion that helps us doing that. That is interest. If we aim our interest wildly around us and we are interested in basically everything, then we learn how to deal with basically everything. And that makes us eventually an autonomous agent. So if you limit that interest and you only aim the interest in solutions to problems, then you lock people in a certain environment. They become very good problem solvers, but they don't become really autonomous thinkers or actors.
Interesting. So it's part of this thesis then that the child abuse itself in effect helps create the cadre of future recruits to this kakistocracy.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and not only that, fear in general. Yeah, so all the terrorism that raises the fear level in society, that prevents people from investigating all kinds of things and make them broad and make them competent for all their life instead of only parts of their life.
And yet the psychopathic element, the 1 or 2 or 3%, as you say, seems to maintain its position at the top of this kakistocracy. So they are...
No, I wouldn't say that. No. Most psychopaths, actually, they are quite pitiful people. And they might be rich, but they are typically ruining more than they are creating. So they don't end up in very good situations. And the more they are norm-abiding and opportunistic now and again, the better they will probably do. And that's the reason why they can hide quite capably within normal society. But that is then the recruiting ground, because if they are also highly capable, then they might be suitable recruits for the kakistocracy. If there is one like this. So I think it's a kind of a theory, and so we should treat it as a theory. But it's a theory that has, of course, a basis in facts and numbers and models and science. But it is something that we have to develop further.
I think so. And I think, obviously, we can see that this is perhaps only one section or one element within government and political power circles, but I'm sure it is a particularly dominant one for reasons that present themselves quite demonstrably so here. For example, the angle that I usually have thought about this issue from is the blackmail factor, because of course anyone who is a participant in these types of acts is going to be eminently blackmailable, eminently controllable from that perspective. So anyone who has information about these activities will have that sort of Damocles hanging over that person's head for their entirety of their political career. And we can very well, I think, understand how that type of blackmail fodder would work in controlling various political puppets, basically. But it's interesting because this not only addresses that blackmailability factor, but it also addresses the sort of the motivations of the people who actually participate in these acts. Not necessarily, obviously, people who have no moral standards whatsoever or have been completely demoored from any sort of moral standards, but also to winnow out those with the moral qualms about engaging in these types of acts, because you don't want people with moral qualms to be part of that cadre for the kakistocracy. So there's kind of a winnowing process here. Yeah. I find that particularly fascinating. And I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that analysis. I just wanted to point that out because I think it's important to address this from both sides, both the abused and the abusers. I think on both sides there is a sort of a process of refinement of the end product, which for the kakistocracy is more pliable servants.
Yeah, but even the kakistocracy, they are people with a rather limited set of skills and scopes. They are really afraid of everything they can't control. So they feel an extreme urge to control. And so this is not the best of all. It's by definition, of course, the worst. But not only the worst in a moral sense, but it's also worst in the sense that they have a very limited scope of behaviors that feel comfortable for them. And being in complete control of the world is something that they crave really madly. Yeah, so it's rather pitiful people as well, actually, like their victims.
Indeed. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that this would not be a difficult pattern to break, if only because the vast majority of the population would have moral qualms about engaging in these activities. It's only a small percentage that would be even think about engaging in these types of activities in order to advance their political career or for their own, the sake of their own fantasies or whatever. So given that it's such a small group, one would think it would be much easier to winnow out that group. But obviously there's layers of protection around this kakistocracy that, and I mean, what is the functioning of those layers of protection? How on earth can this last for so long without being exposed to the vast majority of the public that would be absolutely appalled at these practices?
And it's a very good question. And it has very much to do with how different people understand the world. I think that I see the aristocracy, the old aristocracy that is always on top of society, as at least part of them are part of the kakistocracy. And there was some quote of someone, I forgot his name, who said, among all the people that I've met, the most excellent individuals have been aristocrats, and the worst individuals have been aristocrats. So I wouldn't be surprised about that. And so the aristocracy has access to the best education, and so they can actually really great people can be part of that. But if they self-select also on psychopathy, then of course we have the worst people as well. So you have all those that aristocracy that used whole populations to wage war. Which is a form of slavery as well. People fight wars for a purpose that it doesn't serve their purpose whatsoever.
For king and country.
So that is it. Yes, exactly. What the hell is that? Why do you need it? And then you have a newer aristocracy, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, etc. They come from a different type of brand. And maybe they have always existed, but we see them now. They come from money, banking, infrastructure, all these kind of things. And they have been kind of merged, brought new skills. The old aristocracy was very much about land ownership, war, things like that. And these people, they need kind of servants to do the real work. The people who are visible, the Bush family, for example, probably pretty high, score high on psychopathy. And so you will see that they are often part of things that are directly connectable to the child abuse networks. On the ISGP website, which has an excellent story about the True Affair in Belgium, and that goes. He really goes far, and he can easily connect it to Gladio, to all kind of banking scandals, Iron Contra, Iragate, the Franklin Credit Union, all those scandals associated directly with the Bush family, BCCI. And so this kind of the point here is that those abuse networks are something of the unprotected underbelly of the kakistocracy. They need it, but it is so difficult to keep it completely hidden. And then we have an important point: who wants to know these kind of things? If you are someone who is norm-abiding, who is struggling to understand the world, and then someone is going to tell you that everything that you hold dear and that you need for as a stable point in your society, your authorities, that they are completely unreliable and among the worst people of the world, then you're not doing them a service. You're doing them a disservice by attacking the foundations of their life. And so we need a way to explain that it is that they should select another type of person, not a power-hungry psychopath, but a real wise leader, if they need leaders. And that is Well, that's a possibility. Wise people have also been in power. Or maybe in power is not a good word for really wise people. But anyway, they have led other people and created an ever better world, probably. But even, I'm not sure that we are going downhill with our world. More and more we are able to co-create a world in which it is pretty good to live for most people. It's not so very good to live for many animals. But maybe we will find a way within a few generations to repair that and to create a more or less sustainable world for pretty much everyone. But we can only do it if we control and limit and eventually abolish the Kakistocracy.
That is the root of the issue, isn't it? So given what we've just been able to deduce about the Kakistocracy, working from the outside, looking at the shape of the society it creates, looking at how it seems to recruit its members, how it keeps the public basically from looking too deeply under the covers because people are afraid of what they'll find. Given what we've just been able to deduce about all of this, does that present us with any ideas for how we can approach dismantling this Kakistocracy?
Well, I think so. Let's see what we already know. One is that so much is already being known. You had 137 individual posts, and most quite long. There was, and basically they were all pointing to more or less mainstreamy sources. So the mainstream is talking about these kind of things. They're not putting everything together, but they are, to some extent, doing their work. People know this, even if they don't like to hear it. But they are kind of ready. They half know it, actually. Victims, of course, are becoming vocal now and again. We have anti-corruption methods that sometimes work to some extent. And there have been some very good government reports also in the United States, and they never end somewhere, but the research has been pretty well done. We have very good websites. And so the basis is actually fairly good, and we might have more than enough information already without doing any research. But okay, let's do more research. Yes, so if you ask me, from what can we do, what should we do? And it would be a number of things. The starting point would be to compile more information from multiple perspectives, more countries, more names, more networks, and then maybe creating a number of information hubs. ISGP is one, but we need probably more that probably are already a few. So that is, I think, a really important first step. And then we need something that resembles science on this topic. Science has the advantage that it is, if it's done well, it's done so rigorous that no one can really dispute the answers. Yeah, so we should find a way to do this in a really rigorous way to make us strong. So we have to involve a number of scientists to advise us here and again. I'm a scientist, so I'd love to participate in that. And then do some data mining. Make infographics, build automatic or not automatic hierarchical networks of people and events and how everything relates and so. And then using that to find all kinds of patterns so that we have a clear modus operandus for these type of people. Because I really believe that they have only a limited scope of behaviors that are natural for them. So what... And then we need a little bit more theory. What is the mindset of the Kakistocracy? What can they agree on among themselves? And what type of structures of corruption does it actually lead to? Yeah, so that we know where to look, know how to interpret these kind of things. If we see only 2 steps, we can predict the other 8 steps, so that we eventually see pretty much everything. So that is a very important, more or less scientific part. But everyone can engage in that. That is not a. It's just a way of doing it. It's not the persons who are doing it. Then associated with that is also come up with a number of theories. This is the way we can compile all these patterns, all this information together. This is the explanatory theory. And my Kakistocracy story is one theory. Maybe it is possible to approach it just from regular political power influence theories. It might work just as well. And then if we have such a basis, we can generate predictions. And we can say, okay, we have a network of people, the Bush clan, for example, they have behaved like this. They are now switching in that direction, doing these kind of things. And so we expect a certain pattern. A little bit like our previous discussion about climate and the weather. So what type of climate can we expect from these people? We can connect all kinds of events by the people that participate in them or their families, and explain all kinds of things in a little bit bigger context. And then eventually, or maybe at the same time, but it's always that is the activism that should follow from this. And the thing that is a bit dangerous is premature activism. So if you're not really knowing what you are doing and you're very active, you make either a fool of yourself or you align yourself with goals that are not yours eventually. So basically you make a fool of yourself or you misspend your time completely. And then if we compile our information really well, we can find all kinds of people who will actually help us. Victims, church groups, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. Maybe the top of them might be corrupt and not self-serving, but many of the people at the bottom, they are definitely not corrupt. And then, well, maybe simply make educational material. Make all kinds of children's stories or whatever about how to detect a political parasite, and do all kinds of nice things with that. Also the infographics and so. And then at a certain point, if we really know what we are doing, then we should make it personal for the people involved. Expose them, make sure that they are ostracized. And we can have all kinds of campaigns, the political parasite purging program, and eventually we shouldn't do all the work, but we can make sure we is then the alternative media and the people who are interested in that. But this is so big that we can actually elicit the help of pretty much everyone.
Well, everyone who's on the side of morality, anyway, one would expect. So,
well, and that's quite a lot.
Exactly right. I mean, I do think that is the vast majority of the population. So, it seems to me that the vision that you're putting forward is not one where there's going to be some sort of, roundup of the criminals through the political system or the justice system that's going to lead to some sort of, mass trial or something of that sort, or some sort of mass inquiry in that sense, but you're talking in the language of investigation, acquiring knowledge and data about this, spreading that to the people who are generally would be interested in this information, and using that as a basis for the ostracism of the Kakistocracy, which I think is an interesting idea. Could you just draw that out a little bit more? What do you mean by ostracizing these people?
Well, if you see group forming in general, then it is an us and a them, typically. Well, and this is the us are the people who have high standards of morals, and the them are the people with low standards of morals. And that is actually quite easy. We already have that. It is not new. The problem is that we have a confusion of who has high and low morals. And so if you the ostracism is really fundamental. It has to do with disgust, by the way. When you are disgusted, you don't want to make something In a physical sense, you ate something that is not very very well. You're disgusted. You puke it out or something like that. So that then you separate yourself from something that disgusts you, and that is exactly the same in this case. These people do disgusting things, so the disgust reaction will put them in a different group of people, and that is the ostracizing.
I think that is the best way of envisioning this, because it is, I mean, we do need to puke these people out of the political body politic of all of our individual nations, and obviously from centers of power and control altogether. And I very much resonate with the idea that you're putting out here, that this is going to be ultimately, I think, a people-powered movement that will hopefully progress towards knowledge, and using that knowledge as the basis for that action of ostracism, because I think that is the absolutely the key cornerstone that we need in order to proceed with this, is the sort of cornerstone of certainty, of knowledge, of data about this thing, because obviously this can also turn into witch hunt, and the witch hunting masses can be directed here and there and against each other, and
exactly,
in which way?
Yes, exactly, and that is then we are playing their game.
Exactly right, and I'm sure that goes on and will continue to go on, and
they will dangle a few people in front of us, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to think about here, and it's such an important issue, because I think this is one of those things that really go to the point of whether or not the people can actually influence the greater political games that are being played. Because, again, going to the ballot box is not likely to change the Kakistocracy. There has to be a more fundamental way to address this.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't care at all, of course. They select the candidates anyway. And the ballot box has nothing to do with selecting or deselecting the Kakistocracy.
Interesting. Well, I think this gives me a lot to chew on, and I'm definitely putting this into my own computer algorithm that I have for how best to deal with this. And I think this very much resonates with what is happening in the open source investigation, or at least what could happen with this type of investigation if it is pressed forward, if it is amplified, if it is picked up elsewhere by other groups doing similar work. I think this really can be a truly transformational moment where we start to grasp the power that is incumbent in us in these types of investigations. Any other thoughts that you'd like to add to this before we call it a day?
No, maybe just a suggestion in the open for people. Start making infographics, databases, things like that. Share them widely, and basically the only thing that we need now is that people use their own creativity, their own zeal to come up with whatever fits their competence and is associated with this, and then eventually the good things will filter upwards and will be shared among pretty much everyone.
Don't wait for orders from headquarters. Get out there, start engaging, and yes, use whatever talents you have in whatever way you can to spread this information, this awareness, this data as far as you can. But again, we have to be careful about what data we're spreading, because spreading the wrong data can play into the wrong agenda.
Well, right. I'm sure that they will try to subvert this at some moment in time.
I'm sure they already have to some extent, and we'll have to see how this plays out. All right, well, Tjeerd, we are moving into a very interesting era where all of this is taking shape. So we are part of this conversation, and now it is in the hands of the listeners and readers out there who how they choose to take this information and how they choose to run with it. I'm excited to see what happens as a result of all this. Dr. Tjeerd Andringa, thank you so much for bringing the Kakistocracy to my attention and for putting these thoughts in front of us. I think they're really important for us to proceed with this investigation.
You're welcome.
Now available from CorbettReport.com. The Data DVD Volume 4. Every podcast, interview, episode and article published on CorbettReport.com in 2011. All on 2 data DVDs. For details or to buy other Corbett Report DVDs, please go to CorbettReport.com/shop.